Thanks for staying with us on the conversation. We're still discussing situations in Zimbabwe where the health minister, who is also the vice president, Constantino Chiwenga, has said that he will criminalize the movement or the migration of health workers to other foreign countries. And we still have with us Pilot DUBE, who is the finance general of the Zimbabwe Democratic Party. We also have with us Mellisa Ncube, who is a mental health activist and clinical psychologist. Now, just before we went on the break, Pilot was mentioning so many ills in the health sector, and he talked about underinvestment in the health sector in Zimbabwe. Now, and when you were talking, Mellisa, you mentioned the fact that it's quite expensive to go into the medical profession. But from what we have here, it is stipulated that 15% of the country's annual budget should go into the health system. So how much of it do you think, or how much funding do you think the Zimbabwe government has put into the health sector, Mellisa?
All right, thank you. Okay, so you have to understand that this is on paper. The government has said that it's stipulating 15% of the budget to the health sector. But now the expenditure, it's quite different. So the budget allocation and the expenditure, there's actually a very big rift between those two. So you can understand that, like, from 1980 to around 2017, the health expenditure averaged around 2.63%. And from then on, from 2017 up to right now in 2023, it's fluctuating between 5%, between 7%. It hasn't really reached the 15% mark. It is a dream. It is a dream, but we are not yet there yet. As of yet, we are not yet there. So I feel like in as much as the country is willing to go up to 15%, it's still something that is quite a reach for us. So you can just play around with those figures and just see that in as much as that is what we want, we're still a bit far from that. It may happen, but just not now. It's not happening right now.
So how has this underfunding affected the health system in Zimbabwe? I mean, you talk about no equipment, you talk about education for the health workers. How bad is it in Zimbabwe due to this underfunding?
It is quite bad, because you'd realize that our hospitals, they are very much understaffed. That's one. They're understaffed, and there is very little equipment for them to use on the patients. So for example, maybe let's talk about the personnel. We have certain spaces, like there's a mental health institution called Ingutsheni Central Hospital. That one only has one psychiatrist. It's a very big institution, but there's only one psychiatrist. And the whole of Zimbabwe, there are only 6 psychiatrists who are actually working with people that have mental health issues. So you can see exactly that the ratio is just way too small. Imagine just 6 psychiatrists having to work with about more than 15% of the country's population who have mental health issues. Already that one is a very big gap. And also now, when it comes to the machinery that's used, the resources that we have, they're very little. Especially during COVID-19, we had so many people that actually lost their lives because they couldn't get all the resources that they needed. Things like ventilators, those were things that we didn't have in our hospitals. And even right now, we still don't have that. So instead of us saying that maybe the government is trying, yes, it might be trying, but there's still a very big gap between what we want and what is actually on the ground. So I'm sure even Mr. Pilot can actually attest to it, that the situation in our hospitals, especially the government hospitals, it's very, very bad. That some people actually even prefer to stay at home because they feel like going to the hospital may actually be a health hazard for them, because they're actually scared that when they go to the hospital, they may actually be more susceptible to actually catching even more diseases and actually even getting fertile in those hospitals. So it's really, really bad. I won't sugarcoat it. It's really bad for now.
All right, quite a sad situation there in Zimbabwe. So, Mellisa, you've highlighted, and even Pilot highlighted, so many issues affecting the health sector and why we have fewer doctors in Zimbabwe. But right now, the health minister, who is also the vice president, Constantino Chiwenga, he says that he would criminalize the hiring of these medical professionals due to the effect it's having on the country. So, Pilot, are you against the recruitment of medical professionals by high-income nations? And do you believe that this hiring or this poaching, as Chiwenga has called it, has become unethical?
Well, thank you again. This is a question of it takes quite a long time for a doctor to be qualified in Zimbabwe. It's a 5-year program or more for someone. So when they qualify, salaries are so low, the working conditions are, and some of them are, most of those are really unemployed anyhow. So they after qualification, they don't find quite some lucrative employment in the government hospitals. So some of it is due to unemployment in the country. It's not, the health sector is not 100% employed, in the sense that we've got some nurses, some doctors who are even selling airtime. So for him to say he's going to criminalize those people who are unemployed and they get employment somewhere, it's really quite disingenuous. So in any case, the law of life is that wherever there is demand and supply, in other words, if the government invests in the health sector, there's no need to actually, let's say they are well paid, to find actually doctors coming from outside to come to work in Zimbabwe. It's just a question of working conditions, and there's no militarization or no which can try to solve this problem. It's a question of investing in the health sector so that our doctors find treatment and good working conditions. We have a situation where patients are asked to bring their own medicines, their own bandages, and that's not that's a recipe for doctors to be disgruntled with working conditions. And if there's an offer for better working conditions, who will deny? Who will take that down? So it's really a question of the government trying to put the working conditions competitive.
Okay. All right. Now, you said when there is an offer for greener pastures or greener positions, that definitely people would want to move. So, Mellisa, there's been an issue there. You talk about underinvestment in the health sector. But on the other side, I mean, you talk about these foreign powers who seeing this underinvestment or seeing how the economy is not able to help the health sector. Do you think that instead of hiring or luring these people to greener pastures, that they should rather invest in Zimbabwe's economy to try and build up the health sector, not taking, or in the words of Chiwenga, poaching these health personnel to Europe?
All right. Thank you. So I feel like that is a very tricky situation. It's a very tricky question, actually, because at the end of the day, in as much as we are patriotic, it's still all about the bread and butter issues. You know, I may want to invest back in my country, but if my country can't even give me a sustainable career where I can be able to take care of my children or take care of my family, then I would be forced to go outside. So the Criminalizing Act really, in as much as he says that it's a human trafficking situation, I feel like it's also a human rights problem, because now the vice president is actually criminalizing people from actually going out and looking for greener pastures, in which it is a human right for you to get actually all the things that you need to actually live. So now it's a human right. It's now a human right problem, right? So what can be done instead of him criminalizing this act on the health workers? Maybe if the government can come up with certain solutions where the health system can actually be better and be conducive for health workers to work in, so that they don't have to go outside, because no one really wants to go outside. Home is always best. No one really wants to go halfway across the world to go and find greener pastures. But now, if push comes to shove, then that's what's going to happen, really. That's what's going to happen. So instead of him concentrating all the blame on the health workers, the government should also take into consideration its very big role on the influx of all that, or of all those problems. So I really feel like, in as much as Zimbabwe has to invest in healthcare system, which also includes the healthcare workers being also here, it also has to consider the healthcare implications on also the healthcare workers who are actually not getting enough remuneration when it comes to their work, and also the working conditions that they are also in.
Okay, now, Mellisa, I'm going to stay with you a bit now, because there are reports that the Zimbabwean government, aside criminalizing this hiring by foreign personnel, it has also stopped issuing clearance letters allowing medical professionals to work abroad. Now, what is the fate of those who have traveled? Because if your papers are not signed, you cannot work in the United Kingdom. What is your fate?
Well, now, I feel like they're already stuck now. They're already stuck in wherever they are, because if they've been criminalized, it means they can't come back here and be treated as the same citizens that they were. So them being criminalized as people that are actually not patriotic to the country, it has actually led to them being actually isolated in all those places that they have been. So I really feel like it's a situation that could have been handled in a very different light. Effective communication and dialogue is something that should have been done before such measures were actually put in place. Because now it really feels like it's an authoritarian state where, you know, the government says, you do this, and if you don't do it, then you are now prosecuted for it, in which that's not how things are supposed to be, especially in this day and age. Dialogue always helps when it comes to situations like this. So I feel like there was a very big gap when it came to that dialogue between the government and also the health workers. So now the people that are now in the center, or also in the firing spot, are the people who have already gone out. So it's a really big problem for them, those that have gone out, and actually even for them that actually still want to go out, because it's really still a personal choice. Whether you want to leave Zim or you don't want to leave Zim, it's still a personal choice. It shouldn't be anything that is criminalized or anything like that.
Now, in the move of dialogue pilot, do you think that the government, Zimbabwean government, will actually go in that line? Because earlier on you talked about strike actions and even the government criminalizing health workers from striking. So do you think that the government is going to lay a balance between all of this and try to improve the health sector in Zimbabwe?
Thank you again. I got into a problem. I don't know how operationally it's possible to criminalize who and why. Because when people go outside the country they go out as individuals, they get jobs and so forth. In other words, the doctors will just leave the country, like when they visit, and then they get a job and then they go. So this what talk about criminalizing is just a ZANU-PF way of politicking. It's just playing to the gallery. It's not practicable. I don't know how. Who do you criminalize? So it's nothing but the usual ZANU-PF mantra of trying to show bravo when there's nothing. That's my opinion. It's not practicable. People will leave the country. They can go as individuals and they or as tourists. Then they get jobs and they like what
But pilot, if this continues, what will be the effect? Because it's not everyone that can actually leave Zimbabwe. So when you have the health workers go, you still have the elderly who are in Zimbabwe, and people are dying. So what will be the impact of it if there is no dialogue? If the ZANU-PF still does not listen to the pleas of the health workers, but rather they're criminalizing it, and as a government they have the right to do so. So what happens next?
The only issue is for the government to invest in the health sector. In other words, there is enough, the government is got enough will, it can invest into the health sector, equipment, doctors, and so, because our doctors have been reduced to beggars, and it's pathetic. I cannot even understand. My own son is doing a fifth year medicine right now. It's, it's just I don't know what's going to happen because these guys, they don't have adequate salaries. They are not even well paid for anything. So the whole issue is politically to invest a lot in the health sector so that they build hospitals, they give working conditions, competitive working conditions for the doctor. That's the only way. You cannot use military tactics and the boss to solve inequalities. The people will always go for more where they are getting more money. There's nothing you can do. They have to invest in the health sector. If you look at how much they spend, ministers and their spouses, on foreign errands to go and be treated outside, they are the culprits themselves. Chiwenga himself was treated in China. Ncube was always in the plane to be treated outside. So we would rather criminalize those ministers who want to be treated outside Zimbabwe. That's my opinion.
All right, thank you, Pilot. Now, Mellisa, there is a saying that it's not necessarily green on the other side. And we know that some of the health professionals, which you highlighted, some of the reasons why the medical personnel in Zimbabwe is going quite low is because they're looking for greener pastures outside. But last year, there were a bit of reports of workers, African doctors, medical professionals working long hours. So how good is it on the other side? Is it really the best option for this medical personnel?
Right. I feel like, however we say it, it can never be perfect on the other side. It can be good, but it can never be perfect. As Mr. Pilot said, the remuneration on the other side is way, way better, probably about 10 times the pay that they get here. So sometimes you just look at the economic situation and you're like, you know what, it's better compared to what I'll have to go through, when I'm in my home country. So I really believe that in as much as the remuneration is good, but still, you're still in a foreign country. You're still a foreigner, and you will never really feel as happy or at home as you would in your own country. So I feel like that's the downside of it. And some they actually fail to actually bring their families home and all that stuff. So I'm sure it gets lonely, and also you never know really how other people treat you, because we've actually had a lot of cases of racism, especially in the UK. We've had a lot of racism cases, but still they still enjoy that just because they're looking for the greener pastures. So it's a double-edged sword, really. It is really a double-edged sword. It is good. The remuneration is good. You're able to take care of your family and do something back home. But still, the life is not really that perfect as you would want it to be. But it's a win-win situation, I guess.
Now, Mellisa, Chiwenga mentioned a whole lot of things. Now, not only is he going for criminalizing it and stopping the passports of those who are traveling abroad, but he has also met with the WHO chief, which is Tedros Ghebreyesus. Now, in a bid to assist the country, the World Health Organization, WHO, revealed plans to put the southern African country, which is Zimbabwe. Now, he put them on health workforce support and safeguard list on 2023. Now, this list highlighted 8 countries which have dangerously low numbers of healthcare workers. So we're seeing a partnership between the WHO and southern African countries, and even those who are at risk of this medical brain drain. What do you think would be the impact of this, Mellisa?
I really feel like if done proper, and also if the plan that was actually put in place is actually implemented in the way that it was actually supposed to be implemented in, it will actually help when it comes to the healthcare system, and also helping in the healthcare workers influx here in our country. Because according to that program, the governments are supposed to pull in funds to actually help the government hospitals and the healthcare system to be well financed, and also it's seeking out different types of funding and donor funds and all that to actually help everything that comes with the healthcare system. So it is a really good strategy, really. It is a really good strategy. We're just hoping that if it is implemented the way that it is on paper, I'm pretty sure our healthcare system will be way better probably in the next year or this coming years compared to where we are right now. Because it actually, from what I've seen from the strategy, it's actually saying that they are planning to make sure that everyone gets equal access to healthcare services, whether it's maternal, whether it's HIV and AIDS related, it's mental health or cancer, anything. They're just hoping that everyone gets all the care that they need. So if it really pans out the way that it's supposed to be and all the funding that has been allocated for it, because I saw that their government actually put aside $90 million for that strategy to actually be implemented. So if things like those actually follow through, because I'm sure you know in Zimbabwe we have a big case of corruption. So if really things go along the same way as it was planned out, I'm pretty sure we'll be in a better position by next year around this time.
All right. Thank you so much, Mellisa and Pilot, for sharing so much light on this issue. We definitely will keep our fingers crossed on this particular movement, as not only in Zimbabwe, you also have situations in Nigeria where there's also medical brain drain. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation.
All right. Thank you for having me.
And now we'll go for a quick break. When we come back, we move to situations in Sudan where there's been a lingering civilian transition to democracy. Just when we thought that we had it right, Sudan once again is having a delay to the civilian transition to democracy. We'll have details of that conversation after this break. Join us again.